Well, hello there my dear friends. Welcome back to another very exciting Star Wars Andor breakdown. We just had Season 2 episodes 7, 8 and 9, the third and penultimate arc of the final season. So just a few hours ago I was scrolling through the internet, as I typically do, and I came across a big account. You probably know who this is, I'm not going to name drop them, but they got screeners for the show. And before these episodes dropped, they posted saying that if you've been holding out, if maybe you didn't enjoy the first 6 of this season, basically this is where the fun begins. And according to them, these 3 episodes were the best of any TV show episodes we've had under Disney. I was a bit skeptical and I was thinking, well, that's very strongly worded, very similar to those who said this was better than the original trilogy. I took it with a pinch of salt. People who get screeners tend to have an agenda to stay on Disney's good side, so as much as I love this show, I needed to see it for myself. But now that it's out, my goodness, I don't know if these 3 rank at the very top of my list, but they're definitely in the top 10. I do have some criticisms and I do want to get into those, but these 3 episodes were simply amazing. I rewatched them twice. So many different layers of nuance and meaning. So getting to the substance, because there's just so much, as I did with my last breakdown, I'm gonna divide this review into different topics, the main talking points, and the big plot points, giving you some of my feedback and my honest opinions as we go along, things that worked, things that didn't, some canon implications, Easter eggs, and those kinds of things. It's gonna be a lot of fun, I promise. So no more jibber jabber, shall we get to the meat and potatoes? Let's dive straight in, but before we do, make sure to subscribe for daily Star Wars videos. Here we go.
This is where the fun begins.
Out of every Star Wars show, Andor has a unique way of making us feel pain. It takes you by the hand in a very slow build-up, it makes you fall in love with the characters, really get to know them on a human level, root for them, and then either kills them off, or in the case of Bix, makes them break up with the main character, and they're gone. It wasn't a breakup in the most conventional sense. Bix says that when the rebellion is won, when the fighting is done, we can have the life we wanted. She saw that Cassian was willing to give up the fight to be with her, and she didn't want to feel guilty for the rest of their lives, knowing that she's the reason he couldn't have been something more. But one of the main reasons this was so devastating is knowing that Cassian never makes it back to Bix. He dies on Scarif and he never sees her again. And so as Star Wars fans watching this knowing the outcome of Rogue One, even though Bix didn't die, the emotional effect was the same. It felt like a character death. That was Bix's farewell on the show. And you know guys, as we approach the final 3 episodes next Tuesday, I hope they show us where she went, where she's established a new life. Maybe something like a post-credit scene. And I hope you know where I'm coming from when I say this, but Cassian and Bix, and the promise of a life they'll never have, almost reminded me of Anakin and Padme. It's almost the inverse of run away with me. You know, let's get away from all of this. Bix is saying, I have to leave. Not because I don't love you, but because I'm not gonna let you sacrifice the fight and everything you've done just for a life with me. Cassian has a higher calling. There's a reason he's still alive. Is it the Force? Maybe. Cassian thinks it's luck. But whatever it is, he's right. He should have died a million times. Synar, Gorman, Narkina 5, Ferrix, but he didn't. Every single time he found a way out. He should be dead, but here he is. And now that they're so close, now that there's momentum to the movement, Mon Mothma left the Senate and Yavin's been established. Now that Cassian's been promoted to a captain of the rebellion, Bix was not going to let him throw that opportunity away. By fate or by the will of the Force, there's a reason Cassian is there. They need him, and as the events of Rogue One and the original trilogy prove, without Cassian, there is no victory during the Battle of Yavin. So this was essential. The question is, in the final 3 episodes, how is Cassian going to overcome this? Well, my dear friends, they kind of answered this with the K2SO situation. His brand new companion and future best friend has just been rebooted. Oh yes, K2 is back and the next 3 episodes are going to be full of sass. That being said, his origin story now differs from the comics, but I think that was always expected. The comic came out during a time where we didn't know that Andor was going to be a thing. It was a Rogue One spin-off comic that basically was a placeholder, and I don't think there was any part of Tony Gilroy at the time that genuinely believed he'd go back to make this one day, to show on screen how K2 and Cassian met. But I'll be honest, I prefer this version. There's an emotional weight to it. I mean, think of it this way. Because K2 was a participant of the Gorman massacre, everywhere he goes with Cassian, he's a constant reminder of the atrocities of the event. Commanded by Captain Kaido, the KX droids were intended as crowd control, but instead, they beat up every Gorman in their path. They dragged them like ragdolls, tossed them about, and killed them as their bodies slammed against the pavement. It was a terrifying scene. And think back to Season 1, Cassian had run-ins with KX droids on Neamos. When he was arrested, they pinned him up against the wall, nearly choking him. So he knows how useful they can be as bodyguards, and I think he's made the right choice. K2 is going to keep him company. I can't wait for more Alan Tudyk. The Gorman massacre was perfectly executed, and in choosing to take one of these KX droids home to be reprogrammed, Cassian will forever be reminded of the horrific things he saw that day. That trauma is permanent. But now let's talk about the big character death. I knew Syril was not going to be happy when he found out the truth of what Dedra and Partagaz were hiding from him. But he died in a very ironic way. Syril spent every day since Morlana trying to find Cassian, only for Andor to not even remember him, and then he dies. This morning, after these episodes dropped, the actor Carl Solo was asked about his character's death, and to paraphrase, he said, "This is Tony Gilroy's way of reminding the Star Wars fandom that, in the grand scheme of things, Syril's character is pretty unimportant. He was another cog in the Imperial machine. We care because he was humanized, and we got to see a snapshot of his life." But while we're on the subject of Gorman, I do have one gripe. I still believe they should have made Captain Kaido the same character as Valen Hess, from later in the timeline in The Mandalorian Season 2, a fanatical Imperial remnant. The likeness is uncanny. They're both so crazy and inhumane. This was such a missed opportunity. But on the other hand, something I really did enjoy in the Gorman scenes was the Rogue One Easter egg. Did you guys catch this? The Gorman bellhop says a line Jyn Erso goes on to say, "Rebellions are built on hope." That was definitely a DiCaprio pointing at the screen meme moment. But Gilroy promised, this show does connect in more ways than we think, even with the smallest references like this. So now we have to talk about Mon Mothma leaving the Senate, and were there connections to Star Wars Rebels? The answer is yes, and I think they did it in the best way. A small mention of Gold Squadron, but they didn't overstep. Let's go through this. Mon Mothma makes the fateful choice to make a public stand against the Emperor during a session of the Senate, the first of 2 canon speeches. Bail Organa invokes legislation that allows Mon to have the floor to herself. Not that the ISB wants this. And she gives one of the best monologues of the entire show. "I believe we're in crisis. The distance between what is said and what is known to be true has come to an abyss. Of all the things at risk, the loss of an objective reality is perhaps the most dangerous. The death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil." But the most damning words is when she calls Palpatine a monster. The monster we helped create, the monster coming for us all soon enough, is Emperor Palpatine. She freaking named that bastard. It was awesome. So then, thanks to Luthen via Cassian, Mon escapes off-world, unharmed. Now we don't see the rendezvous from Star Wars Rebels, but it's heavily implied. And arriving on Yavin 4, Draven, great to see him again by the way, informs Cassian, Gold Squadron is escorting Mon. She's about to make her second speech, the broadcast across the galaxy. So does Andor line up with the Season 3 episode of Rebels Secret Cargo? I would say yes. Gold Squadron is about to bring Mon Mothma to the Ghost, and at the end of the episode there is mention of an incoming freighter to Yavin. Some fans are saying this might be the Ghost, but I think the Ghost crew is on Attilan during this time. I think in retrospect it was best we didn't see the Ghost crew. The tone of their story doesn't really match what Andor is doing, and there was no need to retread territory twice. I think this was one of the best arcs to date, truly a phenomenal 3 episodes. Another detail I loved was seeing Melshi again. I will be making more videos in the week talking about specific scenes, doing more deep dives. What did you think? Did you enjoy this arc? And are you looking forward to the final 3 episodes, 10, 11 and 12, next Tuesday? If you enjoyed this breakdown, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.